I think that just as Vietnam veterans themselves can't be stereotyped, so the writing that has come out of the war can't be stereotyped as well. What we're going to hear tonight are two very different types of interpretations. Neither of them are really the traditional combat story. I think when I first came back, the type of fiction I was writing was that type of story. And I really didn't come back to writing about the war until 1988, and I think what spurred me was the influx of Indo-Chinese refugees coming into the country. Sort of weird feeling to see them. These were like figments of my own past that were supposed to stay in the past. Suddenly there saying, here we are, deal with us, like unfinished business. I think Lost Armies for me was an attempt to take care of some unfinished business. I'm going to give you a little background so what we do. We're going to do a collage of pieces from the novel so this makes sense out of context. The story is about two people who fear that they've lost their humanity to the war, which was a common background for each of them. One is a Vietnamese woman, a refugee who comes here, feels cut off from her culture, from her country, from her humanity. The other is a Vietnam veteran, an American, who feels largely the same way. The woman is named Swan. That's spelled X-U-A-N, pronounced with the S. She was brought up as an educated, middle-class Saigon woman. Her father was a high government official. And during the war, she turned against it and subsequently was arrested and tortured, imprisoned. She was kept in what was called a tiger cage, which was a 10 by 10 pit in the ground. Maybe as many as 10, 15 people kept in it, bars on top, sometimes lime thrown on the prisoners. She was also tortured, as was the custom, with electricity, having a field telephone attached to various parts of her body. And I mention this now because it'll play a part in what we read. The male character, Emmett Wheeler, was a helicopter crewman in Vietnam. He was a journalist. He has now come back after many years to a county much like St. Mary's. He's been back from Vietnam for over 16 years. He's tried not to think about it. Like many of us, he tries to keep it out of his mind. But it comes back to him in his job. He's getting by crabbing, but also by tutoring in English some of the Vietnamese refugees that have come into his area. The book involves essentially a search for a friend of his, Dennis Slagle, who was involved in a series of atrocities in Vietnam, who, as a sort of redemption, I suppose, joined a veterans anti-war group when he came back, but who now, years later, seems to be terrifying these refugees who came into the community. Wheeler is looking for him, and in that search he finds Swan. Wheeler doesn't know at their first meeting that Swan has already been in a relationship with Dennis, a very destructive one in which Dennis tried to define her according to his needs, his preconceptions. We're going to take it from there. I'm going to do this with the help of Kelly, who's going to read Swan's part, and do this as a kind of collage from the novel, as I said. These are the parts that show Wheeler and Swan meeting each other, coming together, what happens to them, but also show the ghosts that haunt each of them, that sleep between them. The unfinished business, because that's what ghosts really are, that sleeps between them. When this first scene, Swan is seeking out Wheeler in the language center where he's tutoring, and she doesn't tell him that she knows Dennis. The door opened and an Asian woman walked in. She had a high-bridge Chinese nose, darkly liquid eyes, slightly swollen lips. She was very slim, almost breastless, in a sleeveless print dress. Closer, she wasn't as young as she had first seemed to him, perhaps in her mid-30s. Her face was cool and reserved, but the flesh on it was drawn so tightly into a mask of control that it countered the calmness she was trying to affect. You could see a scream shimmering under her skin.
Are you the man I see about English?
How can I help you, miss? She ignored his trailing question. Wheeler wondered if she found his presumption that she was unmarried offensive.
Can you explain how this works to me, please?
The center offers an English as a second language course as a service to the community. It concentrates on writing rather than speaking skills. We assume your speaking skills are already past the basic level. The woman picked up one of the exercise books on his desk.
Is this what you use? What does this mean? Controlled composition.
Her speaking skills seemed perfect. Wheeler looked at it. Well, there are several different essays in the book. You copy them to learn the right forms. You make changes to them using the different grammatical forms we go over. You also write your own compositions around the suggestions in the book.
You copy, like a child.
In a way, it gives you the language the way a child would learn it.
Are you the child's father? Do you see yourself like that?
You know, your English doesn't seem to need improvement. Why don't you sit over there and write a paragraph or two for me?
What should I write?
Try to describe who you are. She took the paper to the Carol indicated. He watched her shoulders as she wrote. She held them stiffly like a shield against his stare. In a few minutes, she brought back the paper and handed it to him.
I am asked to write who I am, but what I am now does not define me. I will tell you what does. Once upon a time, and far away, I was a horror for Americans. I let them empty their nightmares of the murder of my people into me. And then I made them look into my eyes until they saw me. I knew that one day they would raise a weapon and see me again in the face of their enemy. And they would hesitate and die. When they left, I knew I had burned their corpses.
Wheeler's pen hunted helplessly over the yellow sheet. At this point in writing the book, I had a dilemma. I wanted to limit the viewpoint to Wheeler's and not give the reader too much information. At the same time, I wanted to explore the character of Swan's. The language center scene gave me the idea of how to do that. What I postulated was that she steals one of these exercise books from the language center and then responds to the exercises in a very private way for herself. These would be like gateways for you into her mind. When this happens, I will announce this by giving the title of the composition she's responding to, such as, "Why are you taking this course?"
I remember a mountain shrine I heard my father speak about for years. Its magic tied with glowing roast and mythology he had created about his own youth. The Mandarin scholar, the educated prince my mother, the village girl, yearned for. But when I visited that place, on one of those horrible field trips, I went on to the other protected flowers of the Guy family. It stank of piss and monkey shit and a hypocrisy of greedy monks. Our father's myths, my lover's myths, his legendary boyhood friend, Wheeler, translated to flesh, was a darker, leaner soul than I had expected. A sickness of lust for me stamped in his rain-ghost eyes like an insidious invitation. "Come," he said, "and I'll ensnare you with my monkey-demon language. I'll ensnare you with my words so I may trap your soul in this red and gray prison, this web of books in whose center I sit." So I stole his magic instead. This book I write in now, Gateway to English, it proclaims, an exercise book. Stealing was my first exercise. The last of the gateway contains suggested writing assignments, comparison, process, cause and effect, and then a section on grammar, references, fragments. The future indicates action or existence not yet begun. The subjunctive form is used to describe a hypothetical action or an action contrary to fact. The present perfect indicates an action begun in the past and continuing into the present. Demon's language. Magic incantations that tell my life like the vaguely suggested words of a horoscope. I have been, I have had, I would have been.
Wheeler visited the memorial. He walked down to the panels that represented his 18 months of war and looked at the names, death names. On night medevacs, the dead would weave around his legs as he hung over a machine gun, searching the blackness. He suddenly saw himself scooping up load after load of names to bring to this black wall. He drove out of the city and into Calvert County, and the forest pressed in on the road. It was dark by then, and there was barely any traffic. He felt the odd melding of perception that sometimes occurs alone in a car at night. His senses finely tuned to the smoothnesses, hesitations of the motor's drone, the vibrations of road under rubber and metal and glass. He didn't believe in flashback. It had never happened to him. But now he tried to coax confrontation, coax out his memories of the war. They were tied inextricably to his memories of Dennis, whose joinings with the smoothnesses and hesitations and vibrations of his personality were a part of that melding too. The humming of tires against the road, teasing whispers. In the enclosure of his flight helmet, in his car now, he felt a sense of isolation he'd always felt, a silent, disconnected gliding over the land. When he heard pilots and crewmen talk casually about the villages they'd strayed, he didn't blame them. They took fire from those villages, lost helicopters, men. They shot at their own terror. He didn't blame, but he didn't do it either. The people they strafed had faces for him. The war slashed away their faces slowly. The war seemed this, an endless wait to do something unforgivable, a sequence of opportunities to free some beast from his heart. He flew in a fragile green machine over the edge of an abyss. The land he flew over was pimpled with Vietnamese grave mounds. Where it wasn't, where it was jungle or paddy or villages, it threw fire at it. The grunts, the BC, the NBA slaughtered each other on the ground like savage tribes while he hung above it all. An audience that participated at times with a machine gun that swooped down, scoop off the wounded, the dead. They filled his helicopter, his days and nights. He cultivated the detachment of a bird. It wasn't always easy. One day, soon after his squadron had lost 5 helicopters and crews on the DMC, his crew chief machine-gunned a woman, clearly pregnant, who'd been working a paddy in which they made a forced landing. Willard had heard all the stories, but then there it was, in the flesh, bleeding into the green shoots of rice. Do you think this is a story, any of this? He didn't know what he was supposed to do about it. What was he supposed to be, G.I. Joe, or the terror in their lives? No one knew. He liked the crew chief, usually asked to be assigned to the same helicopter. The boy was no monster, no more than Wheeler was. He shot the woman out of pure terror. Later, drunk, he bragged about shooting 2 groups with 1 round. In the rear area, people he was talking to laughed because they thought they were supposed to. And the next time he told a joke, it came out easier. And after a while, he told it and meant it. And soon after, Wheeler helped untie the corpses of 2 Marines who'd been tied to bamboo poles, slashed to death. For years, even as a schoolboy who read, he knew this story. Now here it was, done by people who could do it to him, who could care less that it was a cliche. Cock and balls cut off, stuffed into the mouths. The Marine machine gunning the pregnant woman. That was their flesh. This was his. One day, the ship took fire from an island of thatched huts in the middle of a sea of paddies. And his pilot, tired of it, swung back, told the crew to shoot it up. Moments before, Wheeler's eyes had been caught by a child playing in the dust before one hooch, oblivious to his presence overhead. But the child was gone when he came around him. And when Wheeler searched his heart, he found nothing either. He pointed the barrel of his machine gun below and to the left of the area he wanted to hit. He touched the trigger. The village was a village of ants, of lice that crawled over dead bones. He had the freedom of a god. Wires wound around his insides since birth had eroded to thin rust. They were simply not there. He knew he would fire. He anticipated the movement of the gun vibrating up his arms and shoulders. His tracers following running figures on the ground, tumbling them like a hand brushing over toys, bursting the roofs of huts. In his mind, he saw the people he'd known in the village torn to pieces by his round. He felt nothing. He braced his feet, but before he could shoot, the helicopter veered away, called back into formation by an angry squadron commander. It didn't matter to him. He knew he'd eaten the meanness of the war. It had made an alchemist transformation in him and defined him forever. Describe the place where you grew up, then compare it to the place where you live now.
I grew up in a compound, a green island surrounded by walls studded with the dragon teeth of broken glass. It was like another country, a cool country that was a dream in the center of heat and war. In that way, coming to America is like going back to my childhood. Now the country where I grew up has become a dream for the country in which I live. Something once seen, and now remembered only at night in sleep. I fear that the dream will become my memory. It will replace my country. I wish to say this. There is no reality. This lesson for immigrants should be in this book, this gateway. But this book lies, and the language it teaches is all lies. All action or existence is now. There are no actions begun in the past that are continued into the present. There is no past. There is only the subjunctive.
Wait a minute. Wait a minute. This is Dennis speaking now. This is reality. Let me tell you about a parade 12 years ago in Boston, Veterans Day. See, I took this group of vets there, and I asked if we could join in. And the cops said no, but we said we're coming in anyway. So finally they said join. But at the end, you have to picture it, babe. Reservists in white ascots and chrome helmets, Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, the Civil Air Patrol, drum majorettes, the sagging-gut veterans of wars, rumored to be simpler. I mean, the whole mythology, man. And then limping along behind it, separated from it by a thin blue line of law and order, comes us, the real thing. The soldiers of the war, stained jungle suits, missing arms and legs, wheelchairs, 1,000-mile stairs, stone jungle freakiness. Aye, folks, here we are. The cops all nervous lest we jump to Girl Scouts or something. And all the people on the sidewalks either booing us or cheering us. And I couldn't figure out which was worse, man, which was worse. And one woman, she has her hands over her kid's eyes, and she's screaming at them not to look at us, that we weren't real. We weren't real. And there's more, there's much more. There's all the anti-war vet groupies there too, the nightmare suckers, corpse fuckers, yeah. They're cheering us on too, like the whole team. And they don't see us either, no more than that mother. And then we go in front of this reviewing stand near the Common, and there's some local bigwigs and a general in it watching all this. So we had this troop of mummers, black tights, white face, all that Marceau crap, break through the crowd there and pretend to be Vietnamese, and we surrounded them and we slaughtered them right in front of the reviewing stand, right in front of God Almighty, mowed them down with our metallic swell M16s, rat-a-tat-tat, oh hum, typical day in the knob, right? And suddenly, there I was under the stand, screaming at the general to watch, pointing my finger at him like he's some dude 1,500 feet up in a helicopter, screaming at him to this time, watch what we're doing, tell us not to do it. Watch how we're blooding and bleeding on the ground. Screaming at him that it wasn't mine, that it was mine, that it was Vietnam, not the Nam. Screaming what I'd done up to him, man. That's not what our country can do, right? That's not what our own weak asses can do. And I'm trying to make up for the shit I did over there. And what the fuck are you doing? You still think you're above it all like my audience? Wheeler and Swan finally get together, and in this scene, it's their first morning. They found each other. The ghosts of the war are still with them, though. Swan was sleeping on her stomach, her face sideways on the pillow, framed by her black hair. She looked younger, vulnerable, the lacquer veneer of toughness she wore sunken just beneath the softening mask of her sleep. He put the cups down on the night table and kneaded her back and butt gently, feeling a need to substantiate her flesh in this room. She drew up on her side protectively and regarded him, her eyes heavy-lidded with sleep, and brought her finger up and ran it over the stubble of beard on his face, cataloging a new aspect of it.
Good morning, Wheeler. Emmett. Do you still think you can misdirect the spirits by not using your true name?
She brushed her hands over her body to show she was there, not misdirected, gave him a mocking smile, then got up and walked to the bathroom. Wheeler listened to the toilet flush, the sound of water running in the sink. He could hear her brushing her teeth. His house was suddenly alive with noises. He went into the bathroom, walked up behind her, kissed the back of her neck, feeling the cool skin of her hips pushing into him, feeling a hollow past his skin that he was only aware of now. She smiled at him in the mirror, her mouth foaming with toothpaste. He looked at her reflected face and brought his hand up, trying to touch her behind the glass. Swan rinsed out her mouth and spat. her eyes on his fingers touching the mirror. She touched his face lightly. The glassy coolness of her fingers startled him. It was as if he were in the mirror.
You can touch me for real.
I'm having problems with reality this morning.
Are you?
I know nothing about you.
Why do you have to know so much?
Why do you have to hide so much?
What can I tell you? Once upon a time in another life, I was a student. I studied history and then history 8. I died and was born in a boat on the Gulf of Cayenne.
Now, you use your past, your history, as an excuse to build walls.
An excuse? What do you use the past for, Wheeler? I'm a reflection in a mirror, a memory. Why don't you just leave it like that? Don't you understand that there can't be anything before this room for us?
Her eyes were suddenly filled with tears. Wheeler saw in them his own reflection. The swaggering, unmisdirected ghosts of other soldiers come to her inevitably as their mirrored images. His own ghost came to him. Short-time women, cheaply bought enigmas, each a drop of acid in his guts. A cold that spread the heart, belly, cock, and he wondered if she were right, if what they'd started in this bet were even possible, if their hearts and minds would always be cluttered with the angry spirits conjured by the contrast of their joining flesh, the colors of their skins. She was connected to colors like pain in his eyes, colors and noises and smells he buried inside himself. The gunshots of unmuffled engines and the gunshots that were gunshots. The bird chatter language, the odors of fish sauce and steaming rice and piss and sweat, and the great mass of noise and light and strange little people eating and selling and buying and dying and laughing and living under that light. She got off the bed and dressed to go back to him. He felt a flutter of panic. Where are you going?
Outside. I need air.
When she turned back to him, her face was composed, reinvented. Describe how you came to this country. Try to use vivid descriptive phrases and be sure to put in your own reactions to the events.
I remember my death. It took place in dazzling brightness, the sun burning merciless eyes. Who are you, little people in a boat? The answer? We are children, fleeing from a pitiless mother, not understanding that after years of murder, corpses had to be burned. I stared into the water, trying to see my own reflection, a shimmer of my existence, but there was nothing. Now I am in the water. I break through its membrane. I feel the water flowing into my mouth and down my throat. Warm, the taste of blood. The level of water creeps past my eyes. I float down weightless into the heart of the liquid fuel. I am as light and translucent as a jellyfish. The edges of my skin flutter in the soft current. A shark stares at me with dead cinder eyes, and shudders ripple through his flesh. He flicks away with a motion like a flame. I open my mouth and let the water fill me. Its weight bears me down like the weight of my unborn child inside me. Tentacles of pure light caress my face and flesh. Small silver fish nibble my ears. My skin thins and stretches and dissolves into liquidity. New gills itch the skin behind my ears. My fingers burst into sea anemones. My breasts open like shells, and then darkness swallows me. I drown. Swans fall.
In this next scene, and we're almost done now, but in this next scene, Wheeler and Swan, you find them watching a movie, The Thing, which, as you might know, is about an alien being who lands in the Antarctic and immediately starts to murder the humans who find it until they kill it with electricity. Now, anyone might watch a movie like that and not make it any more than it is. But what about somebody who's been treated as less than human, who in fact has been tortured with electricity? What seems innocent in one context might take on all sorts of private images and associations, which is what happens in Swan's mind. He and Swan stayed at the house for the next week, not going anywhere. Long, hot mornings, lying flying together, falling asleep with them still locked inside them. They sought each other often in wordless explorations, a swarming over each other with lips and tongues, a pounding at the borders of skin and secrets and silence between them. She held back only her words. He watched her search out pain in his words, his house, wherever she could find it, as if it were the hidden coin she needed to pay for their time together. He opened a door, a square of light fell on her, crouched naked, small in a huge tub, her face cupped in her hands, water beaded on her breasts like tears, her body rocking, curved into a question mark in flesh. They took to watching a late-night horror show festival on television. Wheeler turning to her during, of all movies, The Thing, to see her face suddenly wet with tears. "I'm not seeking out your secrets in order to destroy you," he said, nodding at the screen.
That frightens me too. That you understand the connection I was making. That your mind is following your flesh inside you.
Why does it frighten you?
Your flesh can't see.
The next day, Wheeler rigged hoses into his holding trays and began running creek water through them, filling them with the peelers he pulled from the pots and pilings or dredged from the grasses. Holding up a large soup by its back fin, he showed Swan how to tell when a crab was about to molt. He snapped them viciously. It was near the time of the year when the females became very aggressive, cracking other crab shells, sometimes even snapping wires with their powerful claws. See the little tinge there?
It all looks the same.
No, look closely. It means she's going to come out of her shell.
Why?
It's how they grow. They back out. They're soft and vulnerable for a while, and then a new shell forms. It's how they mate, too. The Jimmy, the male crab, knows when the suit's about to molt, and he puts her under him, on his belly, not for sex, but for the protection. He can't mate with her until she's soft. They walk around the bottom, sometimes for weeks, she clinging to him, his legs caged over her until she molts. Then they mate, like that pair over there on the piling. They're called doublers.
And you wait until she comes out of her shell. And then you kill them.
Write a process essay in which you give instructions on how to do something. You may use you as the understood subject. In describing the process, you should answer the question, how? As in, how to bake a cake.
How to kill a thing. The thing is an alien life form first discovered by American scientists in the Arctic. It is completely inhuman. Although it appears to have a vaguely human form, its features are blurred and suggestive. This merely confuses the issue, and indeed caused the death of the most humane and liberal of the Arctic explorers, a scientist who wished to reason with the thing. The thing, however, is a vegetable rather than animal. Therefore, there are certain aspects of its being that must be understood. If you prick it, it will not bleed. Its quality of mercy is non-existent. It will not take revenge. It is merely hungry. The thing is extremely dangerous. It will push tunnels through miles of earth patiently, even if it takes years. It will break through rock, not with a single dramatic blow, or with the aid of the machines of a technology greater than our own. It is naked. It will merely push through blindly, slowly, inexorably. If the thing is cut up, its pieces will root, flower, grow into more things. They will spread, multiply, be everywhere. They will be nocturnal. In the daytime, they will hide from the light, but they will control the night. The thing may be kept in a pit, whose opening is covered by iron bars, so that you may look down into it. To impede growth, lime may be thrown into the pit periodically, and you may piss into it. However, eventually the thing will learn to absorb lime and urine and turn them into nourishment. It will grow. Its tendrils will wrap around the bars at night and slowly crush them. It will free itself. Electricity is known as the only possible method of killing the thing. The thing is securely tied and strapped to the chair. It is often and wrongly thought that the humiliation of its nakedness helps break the thing's will. But it is naked already, and therefore its nakedness is meaningless. The thing is a different species. You seek its genitals vainly. Finally, you attach your clamps to the suggestions of genitals on its trunk. You then attach the other ends of your wire to any electrical generator. Small field telephones are considered ideal, both because of the amount of electricity they generate and because of the ironic implications. This is your only form of communication with the thing. You then generate electricity. Arcs pierce through the thing's body. It bucks and arches against its straps. The pain forms the thing into almost human shapes. You may see the shadows of human ribs pushing through its skin. Points of pain tend up into nipples. The pain shapes and folds into genitals, and then twists and burns them. From this center, cracks spread through the thing. It shatters into pieces and burns. All that remains is hunger.
Well, how does the relationship between them work out? We'll give you a little bit of the end as to end this. Describe briefly how you see your future.
Time would have no meaning for either of us. That fall, we would sit in the back of the house and listen to the duck hunters' gunfire cracking over the water. The rolling echo of each shot would touch the edges of the edges of the echoes of other shots. Each sound setting off a widening ripple of images that would travel with cold clarity from my mind to his. Time would be the stretched Maryland that the shots screamed along. Everything that ever was would wait. A riot of color shivering under the thin skin of objects, gathering strength. In the front of the house the next spring, we would plant lemongrass and watercress and bok choy cabbage. Strange vegetables for this soil, although I would insist that they would take. We would plant tomatoes and peppers and corn again also, and forgive each other, and find together an imperfect peace.